Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Trail Culture. I'm your host, N. Robertson, and I'm so stoked you're tuning in. Today we've got Dr. Shaundre Jacobs on the podcast. She's a lecturer at Stellenbosch University and is an expert in the fields of strength and conditioning, fitness, and elite sport policy. This chat really is just to get people thinking about some of the specific challenges athletes face within the South African context. Part 2 will take a deep dive into training as a female athlete and community involvement. I encourage you all to read her full dissertation. You'll find the link in the show notes, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode. I remember the first day, I think, met is a strong word, but when you stood up as one of my lecturers, and the first thought that I had was, this woman has got the most incredible character and energy, and I was like, I can't wait to learn from you. And the same still applies today. I think you brought a necessary excitement and energy to the sports science department at Stellenbosch, and it's just been really cool to watch you grow in that space and to learn from you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks so much.
And Shawnee, so your latest article, or one of them, the title is Contextual Factors Influencing the South African Elite Sporting System and Open Systems Approach. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. You guys will be able to find all the details in the show notes. If you've got time, this is an incredible read for anybody who's interested in sport policy and how that makes a change within the South African context. But with this article in mind, to what extent do you think that contextual factors influence an elite sporting system, i.e. trail running in South Africa?
Yeah. So it's a very complex paper, but it's a very needed paper. So it was the one paper that I had no framework to actually work on. The literature always states that we need to understand and refer and incorporate contextual factors when trying to understand elite sporting systems, but no one actually delved into it. Because at that time I was doing an international PhD with Vrije Universiteit Brussel, I was working with the best in the world on that research, and we just said, okay, but now we need to create something from nothing. So it basically looks at social, cultural, political, and economic factors and how that could influence an elite sporting system. Yeah. Because if you look at a sport, it is penetrated and infiltrated by all of these various factors. So if you look at the trail running sport, if I could look at economic factors, trail running is quite expensive. So if you can compare it to mountain biking or, and unfortunately I do both sports. But trail running, I actually thought about it yesterday because it's a hydration pack that you need. It is water, it is noons, it's nutrition, so your gels, it is trails running shoes, it is the clothing that you need to wear, then you need to have rain gear, it is the races and how much that costs, so the entries. It is quite expensive. So if you look at a South African setting, we live in a country where 50% of the population lives below the poverty line. So if you don't have a specific resource, then it's very hard for you to participate in the sport. And then you ask the question, to be competitive, at a very high level, if you don't have that resource and you're not sponsored, it is quite difficult to actually just get into the sport. So from an economic perspective, it's very difficult. And then if you look at the social side, it's more, being a woman, it is the safety aspect and how that contributes to why people choose sport or why they don't. So absolutely. Some people might choose road running over trail running just because they feel safer running on the road. There are more cars around.
It's less remote.
Yes, exactly. So it is those type of factors that we don't think about, but they actually influence the reason why we do certain sports and why we don't. Yes. So it's just understanding the context that actually surrounds the sport and being able to incorporate that and bring about change. And that can be on a smaller scale. It doesn't have to be a big, large scale. But we must just try and focus on that and make the sport as inclusive as possible. You know?
Incredible. No, and all the factors that influence whether it's a conscious or subconscious decision, and And in terms of accessibility as well, you know, living in a country where a public transport system isn't necessarily guaranteed, getting to a training session or somewhere at all, or let alone on time, you know, that's something that's also to be considered. And as you've mentioned, trail running is a lot more than just a pair of tackies. I mean, even if you look at the cost of tackies, it's not just just a pair of tackies. And I think there's a lot that is incredibly simple about the sport that we can appreciate and the spaces it takes us to. But there's a lot to look at in terms of how can we improve, how can we be bringing people into the sport across the board.
And it has increased over the last few years. I mean, before COVID, I think we did have a lot of numbers of people participating, but since COVID-19 there has been a massive increase in people participating in trail running. I think it's because we were homebound and we couldn't explore and get out in nature or just get out in general, so people started taking up more nature type of activities. So hiking, mountain biking, and trail running was one of the sports that became very popular. So you could see a massive increase in people participating. And where do you see it? In the shops and in the stores that sell bikes, etc. All of them were sold out with a lot of the bicycles, as well as the trail running kits, the hydration packs, and all of those things. And they're like, what is happening is people are just have this hunger to want to get out into nature. And I think the trail culture has also increased that as well, with all the different trail crews around Cape Town, the Stellenbosch area. It has just really made it more inviting for people to want to participate in the sport, despite, you know, the financial and the safety aspects and even the distance that could affect people wanting to be in the sport.
And even seeing that in terms of big races introducing the shorter distances. I saw just this week that Maxi Race South Africa has got, they used to have kind of everything from 100k, 75, the marathon, and now they've introduced a 30k as well, which is kind of bridges the gap between the half marathon and the marathon. And then there was a 13k run, and now I see what's been included as a 7k kind of startup run, and then even a 3k like kids run, which is so cool for me. Just that level of inclusivity, being able to bring the whole family out to do something like that.
To participate in a race. And you know, for me, I looked at, you know, not only race entries, but you rightfully say in terms of the distances, because the higher you go in terms of distance and the further the athletes have to run, the more they need. So the shorter distances is a nice introduction to the sport, getting people out on the trails, whereby if we focus on these ultra distances, we're going to have a small pool of people who don't necessarily have all the equipment or the nutrition or even the money, you know, to participate in those races.
And that just could be a limiting factor. You know, it's not just am I fit enough, or do I have enough time to train for this ultra? It's do I literally have the resources to invest into this?
The compulsory kit, the things that you need. It's quite difficult, you know. And then you just mentioned about the training. Then we live in a world where trail running is not a professional sport, which means you have to, you know, work and you have to participate in the sport. So a lot of us work, and then, you know, after work or before work, we need to fit our training in. So it's easy if you're doing a 20k or maybe a 25k run to get that in. But if you are training for ultras, you're going to have to get your trainings in. So it's really difficult, you know, having a sport that is not as professional as like a rugby, for instance. It's very difficult to bridge that gap between people having a full daytime job and then still wanting to be competitive in the trail running scene.
And I'm just so incredibly proud of the level of athlete that South Africa is managing to produce, and that they are competitive within their respective kind of specialities within the trail running world on the global stage. I think even if we look at UTMB happening this weekend, I think a bunch of us are planning to dot watch all weekend, which is awesome. And just knowing, you know, a couple of the men and women that are there, and that South Africa has managed to, you know, produce them. I don't think they've sent them there necessarily, but just that they are competitive and managing despite what you've just mentioned. And I think the 9 to 5 job when trying to perform on a world stage, where within countries that these athletes are competing against, they have the opportunity for trail running to be their career. And yeah, it's just actually incredible that we've got athletes who are out there and really giving them a run for their money. It makes me really proud.
And we know, as sports scientists, recovery and, just getting your sleep in and getting your trainings in, but also, nutrition is quite key to having a good performance. But here you have someone here in South African setting, working 9 to 5, trying to put their training, squeezing it in, maybe getting a lunch quick, 45-minute easy run in. People think we're crazy, but then you go overseas and those guys train, eat and sleep trail running. So I know it's in different other sports as well. It's the same issue. But I think we need to take our hats off to our athletes, like you said, for what they are doing. And also at the same time, we'd like to say thank you to all the various brands who are supporting our athletes while they are doing a 9 to 5, saying, okay, we'll cover races, we'll cover some kit, etc. Just to kind of counter that and help them to be able to perform on these international stages. And we need more of those type of assistance in the sport.
No, incredible. And Shaundre, just looking at how trail running has grown, I know you mentioned it briefly, but I had a chat to Aaron from Flat Rock a week or two ago, and we talked about how the sport has boomed in the last 10 years. And, you mentioned that it's not quite a rugby yet or kind of a cricket or one of the sports that is kind of loved and supported and known by the whole nation, whether you're actually a fan of rugby or not, when the Springboks are playing. And would you say, where do you see the growth of trail running in South Africa going? More philosophical question for you.
I think we're going spaces and we're going places. Like I said, there was a massive increase just in terms of the last few years of people getting interested in the sport. I always, when we're running around, sometimes we have to be in a city area or we're grabbing a coffee after a run or mission. People looking at us with our little jackets, My grandmother also calls it your klein bikie, It looks a bit weird, but we also are so cool, Trail runners are very cool. And people want to know, what is it about? And what is trail running? Mountain? Is it mountain running? Hiking? What is the difference? So I think all of us, we have to take ownership upon it in terms of just chatting to people, getting people into the sport. Road running, everyone knows what road running is. But trail running, there's still a little bit of, growth in it. But it has really grown quite extensively over the last few years. And I think with big races like your Maxi race, UTCT, puffers, it's really putting the sport on the map, because I was last year at UTCT and I saw someone who doesn't even do trail running, and I saw him at an aid station. I said, what are you doing here? And he's like, no, all this social media is crazy. It's like, I want to be here. I want to come and see what is ultra running about, mountain running. Are these people mad? So I think it looks amazing. It looks great. Just being out in nature, it is very attractive, the sport. So what people don't see is the the falling in rivers and technical terrain and tripping of your own feet and mastering that.
You went through a phase of tripping. There was a few times earlier this year, must have been 2 or 3 times, where I would see you and I'm like, Shaundre, your knee or your arm, and you're like, I was on a run.
Now my knees are quite scarred, but I think it's beautiful, war scars. It shows that I lived my life,
that's excellent. And we're going to kind of get more into your journey of how you transitioned into trail running now. But just to loop back, Shaundre, I think I should have started with a definition of what sport policy is, and what Google told me was that sport policy sets clear goals and guidelines for how a sport can contribute to society. And what, I know you've written this article, a lot of your research has addressed this, as previously mentioned, on an elite and recreational level. But what motivated you to kind of do a deep dive into that with your research? Why sport policy? I know as a sports scientist there are endless options of what you can do your research on, but what made you kind of
what made you go into that? So I did my master's on the biomechanics of sprint. So I thought maybe I'll do a PhD, in the mastering the sprint biomechanics, but on a different level. And I sat there and I realized at one point in time, I was like, when you do a PhD, you need to be able to contribute to society. And I really pride myself on doing translatory research. So that is making an impact. It's not just, doing work in order to get the PhD degree. It is really, how is this work going to make an impact in various sports or national federations, provincial federations. And that's where I just thought, why not look at elite sport policy?
Yes.
Because yes, we have a massive focus on mass participation in South Africa, but elite sport is important. And you just mentioned when the Springboks wear their green and gold, there's this national pride that everyone has when they watch it, and it's like, wow, I'm so proud to be a South African. And that is the power that elite sport has. You see it with Olympic Games, you see it world champs. Just now we had the athletics world champs. Some people who never watch sport, they were just like, wow, have you been watching it? I'm like, of course I've been watching. So it's just that contribution that sport has. And I think using sport as a vehicle of change,
absolutely.
Tapping into the societal issues that we have, like unemployment, but not only unemployment, so youth unemployment, gender inequality, safety concerns around women, gender-based violence, high teenage pregnancy, all of those societal issues, we can tackle it through sport. It is not the direct goal, but through developing our sport and women and girls and inclusivity in the various environments, we can actually make a change. And Madiba knew that, and that's why he used rugby as a tool to unite our nation pre the apartheid regime, because he knew that this is a uniting aspect that could really bring people together rather than divide. So I think if we all realize, when you are in a position of leadership or influence or just part of a trail crew or environment, that you have an opportunity to change and influence people's lives just by letting them be there. You don't even know where they're coming from, but you getting them into the sport, they become really good, they travel the world. You're changing their lives, and you're changing their families' lives, and their trajectory in life as well as in their sport is then enhanced. So there's a really deep meaning behind sport that we sometimes don't tap into.
For sure. And just we're a nation where sport has touched the heart of this nation and changed it for the better. We've seen that. Nobody will ever forget the day that Nelson Mandela walked out onto the field at the Rugby World Cup. And it's really exciting for me. We're going to talk a little bit more about trail culture now, and I mean that's the name of this podcast, but just how the sport is growing, that there's a lot of positives, there's a lot of, as you've just mentioned, areas we can still focus on, but I just see that as opportunity for growth in a positive direction and inclusive growth. It's really exciting. And from the research side now, Shaundre, what is in the pipeline at the moment? I feel like you might be cooking up something incredible. I don't know if you've got the time while training for the ultra, but what are you currently busy with, or what's on your mind for the future in terms of research?
So I'm actually, I get so excited when I talk about research. I've got a really nice study that I'm doing in elite cycling, but I looked at I'm almost done with the protocol, and I was like, wow, I can actually mimic this study on trail runners.
Oh wow, awesome.
So I'm looking at the effect of contextual factors, but more the facilitating factors as well as barriers to women's performance.
Incredible.
In ultra sports, so you're looking at road cycling, elite road cycling, as well as then trail runners would be the next step. Because I've just been doing a lot of researching and, chatting to women cyclists, because I said I'm a mountain biker as well.
Yes.
And chatting to women trail runners. There are so many barriers to their performance, and just understanding it, because the policies that are created are more, revolving around male participants. Even if you look at research, most of it had subjects that were male participants, but then those conclusions are then for males and females, and we know that doesn't work.
Yes.
So it's not that we're saying that we shouldn't focus on male research, but there is a massive gap and need to focus on elite woman performance.
Yes.
So that is where I'm currently at. I'm quite excited about it. I've got at the moment 3 PhD students, and they're focusing on various aspects of elite sport. 2 are mostly in a South African setting, and 1 is looking at trail running specific.
Awesome.
So yeah, quite excited about making a change, and as I said, doing translatory research that has an impact. Yeah.
Amazing. All of the links to finding Dr. Jacobs' research are going to be in the show notes, so you guys don't have to worry. And that's a good segue into topic 2 for us today, which is I titled this the female athlete, a deep dive. And I think you are a strong and successful female by most definitions, and this flows into your approach to training and racing and just your running journey in general. And you've really put in the work since you transitioned over to the sport. I think I met you and knew you in a very kind of running but more track specific background, giving class on that. And I don't know if you remember this, but you actually encouraged me to run my first 10K race. Yeah, you it was the Gino's night run. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So for those who don't know Stellenbosch, Gino's is the best pizza
Yes.
in this whole town. They did not pay me to say that. And I remember I was training and doing a bit of road stuff, but this was it wasn't a trail run, it was an off-road run, let's say that. So bergpad kind of type of jeep track. And you said to me, well, just, go and do this thing. Have you heard? I don't even think you were doing it. And I thought, okay. Yeah, and I signed myself up. Anyway, it was the longest 10K of my life because I was used to running on the road.
Yes.
And even just the inclines of this route, I thought I was going to die. Anyway, wonderful. So that's so funny. I just thought of that now. But and then watching you transition, I know you're an excellent mountain biker as well. I have... I don't partake in that as a sport, mostly out of fear. But mostly out of fear. But I've got mad respect for the cyclists out there. But yeah, as I said, you've got into the sport, you've put in the work. I even remember the first steady shakeout that you were at, and that you definitely brought your speed into trail running. But yeah, I want to chat to you about. I mean, you transitioned, so you came from a track background. Yeah. So just chat to us briefly about that transition.
Yeah.
Track to trail running.
Oh, that's actually a nice saying, huh? Track to trail running.
I like that.
Yeah, I should coin that. No, I did track and field since I was a little girl. I used to do 1,200. Then I did 1,500. Then a little bit of 800 meters. And then I remember I went then from 800 and I moved down to 400 and I did 4 and 8. You always have a double, 4 and 8 or 4 and 2.
That pain cave.
Man. Very. Yeah. It is. I always say to people, it's not racing of 400 meters that is tough. It is training for a 400 meters.
Yes.
When you reach that lactate threshold and you need to keep moving, So I think that helped me a lot in terms of my mindset, dedication to training, because I know how it feels to be on the edge.
Yes.
And I can try and push past that. But it was years of, training that really exposed me to that. But then there was a time I moved to 400, 200, and then here and there did 400, 800 just for some endurance, But my main event was the 400 meters. And I made Western Province colors, went all the way up to SA Nationals for 400 meters. And then later on, I used to do cross country. But that used to be just for, having endurance in the off season, just trying to stay fit. But then I would go do the league, and then I would make Western Province colors as well. And the people used to fight with me because they're like, isn't it supposed to be off training?
Yeah.
Like off season? And I'm like, yeah, I love it. You know? So those 2Ks and 3Ks or 5Ks, used to be quite nice. At that time, 5K was a lot for me. I was like, wow, this is so far.
Yeah, that's considered the long distance. You've moved on to onto that. Yeah. As a 400 meter specialist, I can imagine you were like, oh man, this is so far.
No, it was really far. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed 400 meters, went to Europe, participated over there, with the 400 as the main focus, but 800s, just for the endurance, and 200s for speed. And then there was just a point where you have to hang up your spikes. Every track and field runner, it coming.
Yeah.
When you just feel like you don't have that passion anymore to warm up. Just to do a warm-up, there's no more, how do you say, passion,
that's
desire.
like fire. Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, I think it's it's time to hang that
And what
up.
year was that?
I just finished my master's and I came back to South Africa, and then I was like, okay, I started working at that time, and I realized, I don't have enough time to train. So I cannot have a mentality of giving 60% in my training, but then on race day expecting 100%.
Yeah.
So the input and the output is not matching. And I never had time. I was tired because I was training athletes. I was the head sports scientist of the Western Cape. So I was training athletes. And at the time, I was so exhausted. By the time I got home, I was just like, I'm not getting in, the time to train. And I'm not having that passion anymore for the sport. And funny enough, before trail running, I actually did a little bit of road, Did a 2 Oceans half marathon.
Yes, you have a couple of impressive road times. I do remember this. I'm now having flashbacks to last year. Was it the peace run, the gun run?
Yes, the Cape Town Marathon peace run.
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember the exact time, but I was really impressed.
That was not planned. That was not planned at all.
I think that's why I saw you earlier that week, and I asked you about, and then you said, oh no, you're not doing the race, or it was something like you're either going to do it with a friend or you're not, and the next thing I just see this blitz time on Strava, and I was like, go talk to Che.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a charity run.
That's it.
And that's why I didn't taper, because I was focused on UTCT, and then I didn't taper for the race. And then the gun went off, and everyone went, and I'm like, what? This is a charity run. And you can't.
Competitive side kicks in,
so
and
I
off you
just
go.
I see Zola Bud coming past. I'm like, whoa, okay.
I'm in the mix, let's go. Yeah.
Let's go. And I was like, I looked at my time, I was like, no, really? Okay. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
I did a little bit of road, and then it was farm racing. Just racing, on these trail fun type of races.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. And then it was actually through Steady Shakeout, which, you'll probably chat about that later in a separate segment. But that was actually the first introduction, and the first day, I'll never forget it. But I was shocked.
Yeah.
I'm
trying to, I can't remember if it was the exact first day, but we're going to get to some more Steady Shakeout now. It's a group run in the town Stellenbosch that we're based in. But I think I remember seeing you. I was still studying at that time, and you mentioned, you were coming and you'd seen this group growing, and then you asked me, like, do I need to bring anything? And I was like, no, just like come, pitch up. And then afterwards you were like, dude, why didn't you tell me to like bring water or something? Yeah. And I was like, I didn't know. But to be fair, I remember that you didn't take it chilled on your first run. I think you went out with one of the
students,
groups.
Initially it was just our students. So Simon said to me, just come, we're going to start this running group.
Awesome.
Just come, and there's a beer afterwards. And then, I just went, and the students is like, oh, it's all our students. So it was really such a nice, thing.
And the bug bit you.
Yeah, 100%.
And that, what year was that?
That was 2019. It was when Steady Shakeout started.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I know we're not supposed to chat about it now, but it was our first run was to the mast.
Yes.
It was to the mast. And I remember asking, is this trail running?
So good.
I know we have this thing going around on social media saying, this is runnable, runnable. It was not runnable.
No.
Going up to the mast. And I said, this is not running. This is hiking, walking.
Yes, which is one of the components of trail running that most people tend to forget about. I'm like, you need to be good at hiking to do the sport, but it's humbling when especially all the speedsters are not just saying it's runnable, but are actually running where you're hiking and not knowing that you are allowed to hike. No, that's awesome. And I mean, 2019 to now, so you haven't been on the trail scene that long, but the progress you've made, I mean, that's just leaps and bounds, and going from kind of extending your track and where 5K was long to you were specializing in the 21 kind of trail distance at a stage, and racing and running really competitively. I remember your UTCT kind of time and performance was incredible, and then I think as it does, that ultra kind of bug just bites. And earlier this year, you got a coach for the first time. So that's always interesting for me when sports scientists, and I mean someone like you who knows so much, get a coach. I'm like, oh, everybody needs out kind of an outside voice talking to them. So tell us about that. Shaundre, why did you get a coach?
Yeah, so I've been wanting a coach for a long time, because as you could see, I was becoming very competitive in my shorter distances, actually benefiting from the speed that I had from the track, track and field days. And I drew up my own programs for quite a long time. And then I did UTCT last year, and I ran about 3 hours, and it was high intensity,
That was
being
that 20,
in the red.
21K, 1,200 meters of climbing.
Yes.
So and being in the red for 3 hours is different to being in the red for 800 meters on the track.
100%. I was looking at my watch. I'm like, what? This is crazy. This is crazy. I can't sustain this. As a scientist, I know, but anyway, I was just like, no. And then I came to the end of the race, and I didn't enjoy it. Like, I did well in the race, but I just got to a point where I was just like, I love trail running for nature. I love it for the exploring aspect that it brings. I feel like Dora the Explorer when I go bundu bashing and through rivers and climbing mountains. And, for me, I just felt like this has become really fast. And I must say the shorter distances has really become quite speedy, and it's different energy systems that you are training. So then I was just like, okay, I'm going to step over into ultras, but quite slowly, because we did the 13 peak challenge last year for a charity run, and I really enjoyed that experience. So that was the first kind of bite that I got from ultra trail running.
Slower, seeing new places. I know, I think the trail, like the shorter trail scene now, I mean, most people, or the majority of runners, would dream of those times on the road, let alone the trail for the shorter, the 21K distance. Even up to the marathon, some of the more runnable marathons. I mean, it's impressive times for the road. It's unreal.
Yeah. And I take my hat off to the guys. There's always this debate about what is better, the shorter distances or the ultras, and everyone's going bigger, But to do this fast, short races is completely different training, and it's actually quite hard. It's very hard. You need to be powerful. You need to have strength, and you need to have that speed endurance.
Yes.
Then you need to have the skill of meandering through a technical terrain, but very
speed.
Quickly. Yeah. And then trying to get your nutrition in and staying mentally focused. It's a lot of aspects to take in. So I think it's two different types of sports within trail running. You get your ultras, and then you get your short, fast type of distances, So I just got to a point where I asked myself a realistic question, For me, I used to do sport quite competitively from a young age. And for me, enjoyment and passion is always the goal and the key. And I was just like, I'm not enjoying this. I enjoy adventure. And then at UTCT, I met Hillary, and she came to Shake Out for a little bit of a run. And then we went to Gino's afterwards and chatted with her just a little bit about, science, because she's also a scientist. So Hillary Allen, she won the UTCT 100 miler last year. And she just came to visit. She's from the States. And we were just chatting about sports science and, training women and how you need to train women differently based on the menstrual cycle. And I just liked the way she thought, ideas and her thinking. And then I said, I'm actually looking over to, stepping over into ultra, and I'm going to look for a coach. And she's like, why do we chat? And then why do we chat when she gets back to the States? And then we had a Teams meeting, and now she's my coach.
Amazing. And how's your training changed since getting her? I know you mentioned you were putting your own training together, and I mean, that wasn't a thumb suck approach, or a kind of you were drawing from a lot of kind of resources. Knowing you, I know you would have chatted to a couple of people who have been in the sport, and obviously you've got your sports science background. So what would you say is kind of the major change that you've noticed since getting a coach?
So like you said, I had the knowledge, but it's so nice to just go on Training Peaks and just go and see. I always think I'm problem solving. I'm always doing everything at work at a very, high pace. So for me, just to get that pressure off of sitting and trying to understand what I need to do, it was really nice just to have that. And I think her focus is very individualized to a specific race. So when I did JMC, it was very looking at the race profile, going from a general prep to then really focusing on race specifics. So the big change was really focusing on long runs, time on legs, but then having a hiking type of vert focus. So really changing from runnable, just normal runnable training sessions, but really getting out there on rough terrain, practicing sometimes on the route. And what a massive focus in my training at the moment is doing gut training, and that is training your nutrition and training your gut and stomach to take certain substrates and how you feel, and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So I really focus on that in my training sessions, and it's been quite good, and what I like about the training program that she writes is she knows I like to mountain bike, so I'd use that as a cross training to kind of deload the joints from compressive
repetitive
forces
action,
from the trail running, and then a lot of gym work as well,
Nice.
and then rehab for my Achilles, and then just recovery runs and things like that. So I like the mix, because if I ask a question, I get a scientific answer back, so I understand, like we speak the same language,
No, that's incredible, and it sounds like she understands you as an athlete and a person, which makes all the difference. I think that coach-athlete relationship is pretty close, and having somebody who's just on the same page as you is great. And I'm going to ask you more about your training and some of the female specific challenges, but for now we're going to take a break. We've been chatting and recording for a bit, so you guys are just going to have to follow along for episode 2.
Okay, thank you.